Welcome to the show. My name is Bret. I'm glad you're here. This is a live show I do every Thursday, same time. So come back next week whenever you'd like, and we can talk. We can take your questions. I have guests sometimes, including today, and we have topics. Sometimes it's just Q&A, just about courses or learning Docker and containers. Like sometimes we just answer questions. That's all we do. But today we definitely have a topic. So thanks to all of you that are Patreon subscribers. So if you don't know about Patreon, it is where you can get all of my updates every week. I will put out probably 1, maybe 2 announcements a week. You do not have to sign up for a subscription plan, but if you want to thank me with buying me a coffee or 2 a month, I really, really appreciate it. You can click down on the follow button, and that will basically give you just my announcements about what I'm releasing, open source, new shows, new videos, all that stuff. And thank you so much. All right. I'm excited this week because we have now we have a guest for the second time this year, which I think is a first in 2021. We have it's to give. This is Nuno. Hello, everyone. Say hi, Nuno.
Hi everyone.
He's the Captain Corsair, and you've seen him on here before. We've talked WSL2. He's a Docker Captain. He's a Microsoft MVP. He's a CNCF Ambassador. He's like the trifecta. He's like the EGOT of container community. He has all the credentials. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you very much, and really appreciate it. And hey, I made it first. Then I'm the first one to come by twice.
Yes. Well, in the same year, like within,
right? Okay.
I've had Nirmal on before, and maybe Nirmal is actually part of that club too. Because now I think about it,
I guess so.
He did a couple of weeks back to back.
Even be 3 times, but yeah.
Hopefully he's not watching right now because he'll be like, "What? You don't remember? We just did it." All right. So, well, thank you so much again. I love WSL2. I am not even a Windows daily user. I have Windows all over my house, but it's not something that I live on a Mac normally most days. But I wish I had it. Like, I miss it. I want it. Apple will probably never give it to us. So you spend a lot of your time, like you have a blog about this. You spend a lot of your time talking about WSL. Your demos earlier this year, we're going to put these in the show notes for those that didn't watch it, but that's a great video of just talking about WSL2 on Windows 10 and like going through some demos. And that was basically, if you're on this live stream now, everyone, you can go back and watch that episode. Just look up our names basically on YouTube and you find that video. Yeah. But for those that didn't see that video, they weren't here 6 months ago. Right. They missed that show. Like, give us the context of what this acronym even is and why do we care?
Right. So, So the very beginning is like WSL, Windows subsystem for Linux. Actually, that's Linux running on Windows, but for some marketing and trademark purpose, Windows had to come first. So that's why it's the subsystem is the Linux, because that's Linux subsystem on Windows. But then it's inverse due to, I guess, trademarks. Anyway, so it was born back in, or created at least back in 2016, 15, 16, around that, when the Windows Insiders also started. And one of the first Windows Insiders had this WSL. So how to have it? It was called Bash on Linux, by the way, and Bash on Windows. Sorry, Bash on Windows, and then it came out of nowhere. Nobody was really, let's say, expecting it, at least the community. And Rich Turner, so the first person at Microsoft that to lead actually the program for WSL, made this demo where he just launch Ubuntu, does an apt update, an apt upgrade, installs an application, an ELF application, unmodified Linux application on Windows, and launch it. And everyone was like, what the hell just happened? Like, ELF froze that day, right? And then Bash on Windows was built together actually with Ubuntu, and then it became WSL1 a few years. Sorry, I'm doing like a very speedy introduction here, but it from WSL1, that was like the user space of Linux inside Windows, but still it had some limitations. So there's plenty of videos, there's books actually from friends that have coming out about WSL that explain that actually what were the limitations and what are the limitations with WSL1, which was more like a translation layer from what Linux commands we are running, and it translates it into system calls for the Windows kernel. Okay?
Yeah.
So
it's almost like, sorry, go ahead.
No, it means that, of course, because of the differences of the kernel, how they are built, but also how people forgot that Windows was our NT kernel. That's still what we have today, right? So it was built back in the day where Unix was king, right? So
Yeah.
we had like the Unix tooling for Windows, or I don't remember the name now, but we had already something like that.
Like the
That was a feature.
Linux subsystem, something like that.
No,
Linux
it was
subsystem.
Unix,
Oh, yeah, Unix
Unix tool.
subsystem.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a
So
long time ago. I remember that.
and so I mean, there's some syscalls that might have never been used by how do you say, by Windows itself, but they were built in because it was really to match actually the compatibility between Unix and Windows to
Yeah,
some extent. So now fast forward, these calls, right, these system calls were already there. They were not used, but they were already there.
yeah,
So when you look like the compatibility list of system calls, there's like maybe 80 or 90% even that are actually implemented for WSL1. But then the last bits are really like what separates a Linux kernel from a Windows kernel.
yeah.
So that's the WSL1.
It was kind of like
Okay, that's
I looked at it as like a. It was great for getting started. Like it was super fast. I mean, it did what you needed to do. It was easy. It was way easier than installing a VM. But then the minute you tried to do anything advanced, like run MySQL or Docker or whatever,
yeah.
it
The
started to
moment
just
that you needed to work with sockets, it was the end. There
yeah.
was some, let's say, there was some hacks to get actually Docker CLI to connect through a pipe actually
Yep. Yep.
to the Docker engine working on Moby VM, which was the back in the day
Yeah.
the name, right, for the Docker desktop, right? So we could do something like it, but again, that was I say a hack in the good sense, right? But
Yeah.
it
It
was
felt
something that
hacky.
you
Yeah.
need. Yeah, it's something that you need to actually put in place. You have to configure and stuff like that. So when Microsoft then announced WSL2, so again a bit fast forward,
Hmm.
WSL2 now is running on top of the virtualization capabilities of Windows. Okay, so think Hyper-V, but it's called really virtualization platform. Okay, and this virtualization platform, what it does is like it allows micro VMs, if you want, to be just created, and one of those is for WSL. So now who says VM says also a little bit a shift in the, let's say, the application or the paradigm, right? It means like before WSL1 you can just use it everywhere. Now WSL2 you need to have a computer with a CPU that is virtualization enabled, right? It could be AMD, so I'm running AMD. I will show afterwards, but it can be ARM by nowadays, I think, and there's definitely Intel, right? But you need to add the virtualization capabilities. Now, because it's a virtualization, micro VM, but still virtualized environments, well, now we have the full Linux kernel that can be loaded. And now all the system calls are like VirtualBox, for example. I know that you use a lot in your courses, for example.
Yep.
But imagine that you have a Linux that you install on VirtualBox. The kernel part, I don't say the full environment, that's important now, but just the kernel part, well, that's a kernel that's exactly the same that is loaded inside WSL2. And
Yeah.
now we have pipes, now we have sockets. The pipes we had also, sorry, we have sockets, we have maybe IOs and stuff like that that are a bit different.
Yeah. VirtualBox has been like the go-to solution for everyone for decades,
Yeah.
and it it always felt to me very sysadmin, like raw, right? Because I mean, you're like, okay, I want to get a bash shell so I can run. I want to install something through apt, and I want to run it. I want to run MySQL
Right.
in Linux, right? And then you're like, all of a sudden, as a developer or just a hobbyist or whatever, like you're down this rabbit hole with that thing of like configuring networking and figuring out you have to create virtual machine properties and understand all those settings, which I still don't understand all those settings, and you know IDE
True.
versus blah blah blah, like all these different
True.
things,
True. True.
and then you have to go find an ISO of your chosen distribution and then install that through a very lengthy process that probably takes at least 30 minutes. It's crazy. It's actually, I mean, that's still how you use it today, really, and it's just not. It could be so much better. It's perfect for what it's meant to be, a raw utility for
Exactly.
creating any VM you'd ever want to create. But that's not typically what a Windows person wants to do, right? So yeah.
No, true, and that's the funny part, because I, like, in 2008, I was like, I'm a Windows guy at heart, and from the very beginning, 20 years ago now, in my career, I started actually in the help desk and doing support, on-site support, and going through, really, let's say, the echelon of support on Windows. And then in 2008, for some reasons, my company had to outsource, and the outsourcer was HP. And I went to HP, but in HP they didn't need myself into the position that I was, and they actually allowed me to be a Unix administrator for HP, UX, and Solaris, Sun Solaris back in the day. And now HP UX you forget, because that's Titanium, that's other CPUs, you cannot have it. But Sun Solaris, I could like install it, and the VirtualBox, just for the part of the, let's say, operator, more likely, is like, you install VirtualBox, that's easy, but then the first time you have to, okay, download the ISO, okay, now load the ISO, now go through the installation process, and now you reach some parts of, depending on which OS you are, right? Nowadays it's way better, but you reach the part of file system, and I was totally lost. Like, okay, a file system. The terminology. I'm not English speaking, right? I'm French speaker or Portuguese speaker, but I'm not English by default. And for me, file system was like, okay, in Windows you have C. Is it the file system? Well, yes, it's NTFS behind the scenes. The NTFS is the file system, but we don't see, let's say, the disk portion. And now you have like these file system that you have create, like /boot, /etc, slash itself, so for root, /home, /var, /usr, and so on. And you like, oh my gosh, what is happening here? Right?
Right.
So sorry to not go too much in depth there, but for me it's really like the VirtualBox works exactly for what the purpose it is, and it's like to install full blown, that's the really important now terminology here that I will compare, but full blown OS on top of Windows, where WSL2 is only Linux based OSs. So VirtualBox, you can have net BSDs, I guess. So but it's like WSL2 is only Linux for now, loads the kernel as his own init system. That's the important part also. And by default, you did not have graphics. When WSL2 came out, there was no graphic. You had to have like the what you call a display server, right? X server that was running on the Windows side, and then it would like you could like show the GUI applications, but that was not the target of WSL.
Right.
GUI
It was kind of
applications for years. Yeah.
Very hacky, and not doesn't look pretty. Doesn't and it's funny because everyone wants to take this to its eventual. The final thing is Windows and Linux on the same machine, always running together. Run any app. Next is like, I want to run an Android app. Like, we keep seeing these simulators and things, and like,
right.
I feel like this is going down that road of it just allows Windows to run free anything, like, and make it seem like it's really running on your host machine. So WSL2, we have some questions, by the way. These are all very there's basically exactly what you're talking about right now. Someone asked, Thanoji? Well, sorry, I mispronounced your name. What would be the best WSL1 or WSL2? Which would be the best suitable case?
Really, really depends today on what you want to achieve and what you want to do. WSL1, believe it or not, is great. Like, is great, even with limitations, is great for several, let's say, topics, like the ones that you want just to develop, for example, and you don't want to have too much. And I will enter a little bit right now. Like there's a pain point is like the file system performance
Yeah.
from WSL1, WSL2. But WSL1, how it's integrated, because it runs directly on top of Windows file system, so there's nothing virtualized. It really runs the top. Then for some cases, I think there's plenty of let's say examples on the net, but there was like some cases where the file system was much more performant running WSL1 than WSL2. Now WSL1, because of the file system limitations, right? Sorry, the syscall limitations, WSL2 is better for Docker, definitively, and we will enter this discussion just in a bit. And I have also a small demo. And like everything cloud native, if you think Kubernetes and everything, you will need
Right.
WSL2.
Right.
You cannot just run WSL1 for your. I mean, if you just want like to replace like PuTTY, right? Just to SSH into servers, to SSH somewhere else, where you just need your tools, where you just need your, sorry for the just, but you need your tools, you need your, how do you say, you need your scripts, right? Your
Right.
administrator scripts. WSL1 does the job,
So you need,
and
so
does
if you
the
don't,
job really well.
that's a great point. So, everybody thumbs up on the video if you've used PuTTY. Like PuTTY is one of those things where if you've ever had to use another Linux machine and you're on Windows, you probably either discovered PuTTY by searching, or the tutorial you were watching says, "Oh yeah, go use PuTTY." I started my first experience with SSH. Well, okay, I'm old, so before SSH, we were all using Telnet, and Telnet wasn't encrypted. But that was how I, like, when I first did shell into Unix machines, it was always Telnet. But I think my first SSL experience was on Windows 95 maybe, or something like that, and PuTTY was first out. Whenever, I don't remember exactly when it launched, but and now that I've been on a Mac or a system with a native Bash shell or a ZSH shell, and I use SSH that way, PuTTY actually feels weird to me because of the way it's a GUI first, and then it gives you a GUI for each shell and all that stuff, right? So it's funny that you point that out, because I've never considered WSL1 as really just the simple shell. The simple shell, give me access to some scripts. All I'm really going to do is just run a couple of basic things in Bash, and then everything else I'm going to remote. So it's like the sysadmin remoting tool.
Exactly.
On my iPad, I have something called Blink Shell, which if you're using an iOS device, you ever need to use SSH, get Blink. Blink is the best. It's not, I don't think it's free, but it's not much money. It's a one-time thing, and it's absolutely the best full screen shell. And the only thing it's in it basically gives you this full shell but the only commands that are in it are like ls, make dir, it's very basic stuff, and then SSH and Mosh, which are all you need. So anyway, WSL2.
So yeah. So, but just to end up like with WSL1 SSH parts, there's one part. Okay, I'll bind it with WSL2 then. There's a part that you still have access to the Windows file system, and running a shell on WSL1, it means that you are running a shell on a local machine. When you run PuTTY, you are connecting, and then you have to maybe SCP, so you have a Win SCP, or maybe FileZilla, I don't know, or even PuTTY, I think they have like an SCP connect a small application. But like WSL1, you just have your tools, and you just install them, and that's done. To convert SSH keys, for example, because when you create a PuTTY key, it comes in certain format. I don't remember the format, but sometimes you need to transfer this format into OpenSSH format, and then you have to run some commands. So here you can install OpenSSH on WSL1. It works actually, and you can run the tooling. So anyway, so back now to WSL2, but where the bridge happens is like WSL2 needed to actually take everything that made WSL1 great, Okay, that was really like the first thing that they had in mind. We need to keep the interop between the Linux user space, sorry, with the Windows user space and the Windows file system. And somehow we're getting there now, but somehow also the Windows networking, because WSL1 has access to localhost Windows. But remember that WSL2 now is running, even though it's a micro VM, optimized VM, it's still a VM. It's still using then Hyper-V networking first. Now, where Microsoft were, let's say, very, very smart, of course, to doing that, but it's like they bound the networks kind of between they provide the ability to open ports between WSL2 directly into Windows. So whenever you run something, and we will see it afterwards, I will just do a very small demo about that, but kind of cool. Is like it's opening a port, you don't see it because when you are a developer now, right? So let's move just to the developer part. I am no real developer, let's say. I never really developed, but the developers, when I go to a tutorial, is like, do this, so follow this, how to develop your application. Now you run, I don't know, an OJS server or Go server or something like that, and now you go to what? You open your browser and you go to localhost colon maybe a certain port, and then a pass or not, and then it will show you something, right? So you expect you using WSL to actually potentially have the same. I want to open my browser, Windows browser, put localhost on the URL, and reach actually what I'm trying to test, port 8080, for example. Okay, my application. So that becomes even more true when we enter Docker, because when you develop and you run on containers, right? So you export the ports and everything, but now the ports, if you export it, let's say with Windows containers or on Linux, you export the port, so you know that you do localhost colon the port, and now you know that your port is open, because but even though it's running on your container. Well, here, by having the ports mapping automatically between WSL2 and Windows, it made possible actually to have Docker and Docker Desktop nowadays leveraging WSL2, and for the end user that we are, right, it's totally transparent. You run your application, you develop, you create your container, then when you run your application, you export the port, and then you can use the localhost. And that's, I mean, saying like that is just, let's say, oh, it's normal. For me, it's really, magic in a sense, right? Because it's like all the layers of abstractions and, let's say, connectivity that needs to have something working as if it was in your computer. But still, you're leveraging powerful tools and powerful workflows using Docker.
Yeah, there's a question that's related to this. Andreas is asking about, is it possible to send a ping or something like that from Windows into a container? And what we're talking about here is that, yes, if you're using, not ping specifically, but if you're using a Docker desktop, so you step one, get Docker desktop. It will enable WSL2, and then when you publish a port, whether that's in Docker Run or Docker Compose or even Kubernetes, which is built in a Docker desktop, those, when you publish those ports, they will then be on localhost that port when you're on your Windows machine. Now, that doesn't mean you can use ping, which we're not going to get too much into it, but ping isn't actually TCP or UDP. It's a different protocol. So technically, ping doesn't really work from Windows into a container. At least I don't think. That's my understanding. I would have to get into.
It won't. Yeah, it won't work like that, because like the abstractions is like you have like a dual NAT, okay, a dual network translation. You have the first translation, which is WSL itself. So if you look at your IP of Windows, let's say it's, I don't know, like 172 blah blah blah, Now you look at the IP of your WSL, already is different. Okay, so the
Yeah.
addresses are different already. Now, when you put Docker on top of it, Docker creates also his own network, like the 10 dot blah blah blah. Okay, and now you have like, let's say, normally non-routable, but you have like different let's say layers of networking. So ping from your side to a container itself might not work. Maybe there's a use case, I don't know, but normally, like Brett just said, is more like you run your application and your application is listening on certain ports, and now from Windows you can reach these certain ports. That's the important step.
Yeah. So the ping was probably a bad example. They probably didn't want to do ping anyway. So I'm gonna assume that they didn't really specifically need ping from Windows, because probably what we're talking about is like a common case here is there's some really great Postgres and MySQL GUIs, right? But I don't want to run Postgres and MySQL on my Windows machine. I'd rather run that in a container, easy mode, right? So spin those up in a container, make sure you publish those ports, and then all the GUIs and things on your machine, on your Windows machine that are running natively in Windows, will easily be able to talk to those. Also, watch our other videos, take my course. That'll answer all those questions. The other question that we had very early on, I think with the first question and with Peloton, what's the latest on Windows dropping all their server architecture and moving to Linux? So it's a little bit of a subject change. We don't have to go deep into it, but what is your thought on that?
So Windows Server is kicking and alive first. So they are not dropping, let's say, the Windows Server. It's actually they are almost doubling down on it. That's why there's something like how I can confirm it. Let's say is that if you look all the work that they are trying to put worker nodes for now at least, but worker nodes on Kubernetes, which is like, let's say, a little bit the the trendy application and the must-go application nowadays, right? And the environment. So you learn Docker first, you learn your containers, then you move to Kubernetes to, let's say, a bigger environment. Now, when you reach there, well, all the work that was being done between Docker and Windows to bring actually Windows containers, now you will have exactly the same on Kubernetes. Okay, there's other protocols, there's other, let's say, workflows and everything that the node needs to actually be able to perform to be Kubernetes compatible as a node, right? So this now is what we have like Microsoft doing, and they are really, really helping the, let's say, the broader communities about Kubernetes applications and so on, bringing also like this Windows flavor, and Windows Server 2022 is great. Now, with all that said, one important point. I am one of the first, let's say, in the world that wants WSL2. That's important, not WSL, but WSL2 on Windows Server. That happened just for a small amount of time during some, let's say, what they called uh, not
Technical
the
preview,
dev,
or?
but no. It's uh, I don't remember now, but it's not the long term server. It's like the short. There's a term like
the
Windows Server. Yeah, exactly,
semi-annual, yeah.
exactly. So the semi-annual, exactly. So they brought on 2019 server. They brought WSL2 for a small amount of time, but now, now going forward, we do not have WSL2 on Windows Server 2022, for example, and not going, for now at least, not going. Microsoft decided that WSL2 at least, and WSL in general, but WSL are really, or should be really, more targeted at developers. Okay, so that's just like the small. Be careful. Don't expect too much about WSL2 on server. That won't happen on the short term. So Windows Server 2022 is not having it for now. Maybe it will come with the feature if really someone complains about it or really needs it. But with all the work that Windows is putting on, let's say, on having Windows nodes really about Kubernetes, I'm more speaking about Kubernetes right now, right? But about Kubernetes, then you don't need WSL2 on Windows Server. If you need something Linux on a server, then install Linux directly. Like, and the phrasing was also like, I won't take the server, but if you go to Azure, now it's a, let's say, it's a known almost meme, is that Azure runs way more Linux servers than actually Windows servers.
Yeah, I'm kind of a fan of that decision too, because WSL always seemed like a developer and sysadmin tool to me. And for Microsoft to say Linux is now running in this on a server, I feel like that is a whole world of automation and DevOps and system deployment that once you say that, the community of people think, oh, well, basically, this is how I should run my Linux now on my Windows servers,
Sure.
right? So,
Sure.
like, I have a Hyper-V box in my closet, a Windows server running Hyper-V 2019 edition, and I run a bunch of different VMs in there. Windows 10 VMs, other Windows servers, a bunch of Linux machines. I run them all in Hyper-V, and that's how a lot of Windows admins do it, right? There's actually still a lot of people out there that use Hyper-V as their virtualization platform. Like VMware is not 100% of the world, and for those people, when I heard that little, when they went through that little timeline where they said, yeah, it's going to work on server, I thought this is kind of weird because it's not really got the system centers, infrastructure, and all these things that real admins need to run Linux on Windows Server. So what is it, right? So I actually I approve that decision. Let's not confuse and muddy the waters. Let's make it it's a dev and sysadmin user thing. It's not a thing for automation on servers in the data center. Like, that's what Hyper-V is for.
Yeah, so the problem is not the problem, but what I had in mind was more like back in the day, I was running like Kubernetes control planes because it's not running on Windows. So the control plane, so let's say the main server of Kubernetes needs to be running on Linux. Now, when you are in maybe a company that is only Microsoft and Windows based, like mine currently, uh, the thing is, it was like, okay, WSL is seen as a feature, so I can leverage both words again, still being that the Windows server has his own backup, is on the domain. I mean, it's really like, say, integrated with all our deployment processes and other stuff, right? So it's a Windows environment. Now, if I could put like a feature, let's say like Hyper-V, but instead of Hyper-V, now it's called WSL2, and on WSL2 I can run a control plane of Kubernetes. Then I could have Kubernetes on premises, maybe for the servers still running on server, right? But could be running there. So that was kind of my use case. But then, like you said, the problem is like when you try, when you have an hammer, you do an hammer, and then you give someone a screwdriver, and they will try to hammer with it, right? So the thing is like the WSL2 on server might have gone really wrong for certain persons, and they thought like, okay, I don't have the performance that I want, which might be true. I cannot do this, I cannot do the other, and I mean, like, no, if you want to run Linux workloads on production, please run on Linux directly, not on a feature, right? So yeah. So, but anyway, so that's going a bit tangent here, but that was
yeah. All right, a couple more quick questions for you, and then let's get to some Windows 11 WSL2 demos, because I definitely want to see some of that GUI action. So I'm going to wrap up, though. I love that the WSL 1 versus 2 discussion. Like, I didn't actually expect us to go there, but I'm glad we had it. My mental checklist now is, I love the way you framed it. I personally, as a developer or a sysadmin, I would default to WSL2 in all cases, except if I knew I was not a developer, I never needed the full apt-get experience or CentOS experience or whatever yum I'm using, and I just needed some basic tooling like SSH, and I didn't. Maybe there's some battery savings there by not doing WSL2. Maybe you don't have to have the full kernel, so there's maybe simplicity, maybe a little storage space savings. But really, honestly, people like, I don't know, just do WSL2. That's kind of my take. But so here's a great question. How do you get started in WSL2? What is the path to land into WSL? Do you need to know about VMs and virtualization?
Right. So gladfully nowadays, no. So let me then jump to share screen, and I think it will be a bit better.
Yeah, I kind of feel like that's the point of WSL, is that if you wanted to learn about virtualization and like manually installing Linux and what all that experience is about, go get VirtualBox or Hyper-V and create a VM, right? That's the standard. But WSL was like let's make it super easy to give someone who doesn't care about all that stuff, who's not trying to emulate everything exactly like Linux and have complete control over all the hardware in just give them a simple little Linux machine. Yeah,
exactly. The thing was really to be very easy to start with. Okay, so until up the last updates of Windows 10 2004 that we have today, but the latest feature updates actually. The past was like you have to go to the features, you have to install two components, which is the visualization platform plus WSL2, the feature itself, and finally you would like go to let's say you could like reboot and then you could have a WSL2. But now WSL2, and that's another important step here, WSL2 is not a Linux distro, is a feature, micro VM, that is able to launch a Linux kernel, and now you still need to put something on top of it. Okay, the distro itself, your Ubuntu, your OpenSUSE, your let's say Penguin from my friends, but like if you go to the store, or you can even side load what we call right side load distributions like maybe Red Hat, maybe no more CentOS, but Rocky Linux or Alma Linux that are the replacements, or others. Who knows, right? I'm a Clear Linux, or I was using a lot Clear Linux at some point in time. So, and I had to sideload it because it's not on the store. So WSL, when we say like Microsoft changed also the mentality to be open, is not only like, okay, they do open source and they are not here to destroy the community. I mean, that's open source, they cannot, right? So, but they are really keen on being open. Really, that's the real mentality. And don't take my word for it, just look at the past 5 years, right? Or even now 6 or 7 years, that they tried really to be actors and not just like say having the bad way of, oh my god, is Microsoft, right? So let me not just go too much in there, because I'm a Microsoft fan. So but let me just reconcentrate on something. Can I show my screen? I'm sharing it. Yeah.
All right.
And yeah, good. So I'll just wait that I see it on the stream. Yeah, beautiful. Okay. So with all that said, if I come back just a little back, you needed to go features and stuff like that. Nowadays, hopefully, let me actually go like that for now. If I go to the help of the command WSL, so I'm on PowerShell here. So this is PowerShell. And if I do a help here, I have plenty of commands. I recommend at least once to go through the commands to know what they do when you start using WSL. But the point now that I'm making is like since 2004 and the latest feature, so it has been let's say back. How do you say? When you bring back to a previous version, because I'm using Windows 11. Okay, first off, I'm using Windows 11, but this feature here is now being backported. Sorry, backported to Windows 10 2004 latest update. Yeah, thank you, and thank you for Danny. I see you, my friend. Answering all the questions also. So the thing is like WSL install will, when you have your computer, you just have to ensure now that virtualization is enabled on your computer. Okay, also on your BIOS or if you know it. Then, if your virtualization is enabled, you can start installing WSL2 in this case. Okay, by running WSL -- install, and if you want something else than Ubuntu by default, you can also give a distribution. Okay. Then you will be able to have, once you do that, it will actually give you. So I have plenty of here. I know that might be like a small confusing for what are the distros and the WSL environment. So, but here you can see that my default one was Ubuntu. Or here it is. Okay, so I installed Ubuntu by default, and since then I've been collecting here and there some other distributions, as you can see. And one of them that you do not really create, actually two of them, are the Docker desktop. Okay, the Docker desktop ones are created for you by Docker. All right,
so don't touch it.
yeah,
unless you know what you're
normally
doing.
you don't touch it, like, except if you know. But the good point is, like, even if you touch, you just restart Docker and actually it recreates the distro. So it's not like you won't break it for long. You will break it until the next reset or reboot of the Docker application.
And I think this is an important point, though, to make right here, is that for those of you getting started on WSL, like, you don't have to be an expert in this WSL command line. Right? It's not there
No.
it's not there because you have to use it. You maybe need to, if you want to do version 2, you maybe have to do a couple commands. But to me, the power of and the complexity of WSL and the magic of it is kind of hidden a little bit in this command line. Hidden is the wrong word, but it's everything's GUI and it just works sometimes. You're like, wow, I got Ubuntu, great. But then when you want to do some of this more advanced stuff, like have all these different versions and switching back and forth and managing them, that's where you need to dive into this WSL command line. So
Exactly,
I'm glad you're showing it, because it's important.
By default, to install any, I think if I type, maybe we can have. If I type Linux in the now I'm in the Microsoft Store, right? And in the Microsoft Store, if I type it now, just Linux, for example, not even Ubuntu, I have Kali, which is great. Okay, SUSE Enterprise and also OpenSUSE here. Okay, then we have Penguin, which is a distribution that was really created by the community for the community, almost around WSL, but not only. It's really like now there's a lot of integrations, let's say, by default also. So if you want to take your out of the box experience a little bit further, you might want to have a look at Penguin definitively. And then there's others. Okay. So yeah, whatever. Now, in terms of Ubuntu, and it's the same for SUSE, for example. As you can see here, we have like different versions. Okay, so we have the SP2, the SP5, and 1 and 3, of course, and then we have the Ubuntu. We have 2004. We have Ubuntu itself, which is 2004 also, but it's just like a meta package if you want. And then 1804 still here. And then if you want, Fedora is done by the same team as Penguin, so they did like a remix, an official remix from Fedora, so it's here. But
Cool.
anyway, so you have all these distributions, and like you said, Brett, it's like if I'm a GUI guy, I'm not, let's say, too much, at least for now, into like the WSL commands. I can come here, I can click on Kali, for example, and I can just install it from here. So you can see that Kali is nowhere here, right? And if I click install, hopefully my network, normally I have a pretty much solid network, so it's okay. So here is downloading, and now from here again, I don't do anything here. Actually, if I press the button here, do I see? I don't have. Yeah, okay. I see here recommended Kali Linux, so I can start it from here, or I can start it from here. And if I click it here, it will open now, of course, a shell, okay, a terminal, and then with the shell inside Kali Linux. And now I can create my username. I can give it a password like you would normally do for a normal Linux installation. But look, now I have Kali Linux running, but I did not install any VM. I did not download any ISO. I did not have to go through a setup that was more complicated. That was just a username and passwords, and that's it. And now I'm on the shell, and here I can do a sudo apt update. Okay, I can again it will ask for my password, and now it updated, and I can see that already. So the Kali Linux package and the Ubuntu and OpenSUSE and Penguin and everyone is kind of the same. They are always like kind of updating their package also in the store. So I don't have like I'm not running like an old version of Kali Linux. I'm running, if I go to the OS release, sorry, I will just do something like this. I'm let's say okay, it's the rolling release, but I'm running really one of the latest, if not the latest version of Kali Linux. Right.
All right.
So that's that, and I installed Kali. That I have Kali on my Windows now. And if I redo here again, if let me, oh no, okay. If you look here, I will not clean it up, but if I go again, just a list without the versioning, and now we should able to see Kali, where I did not have it before.
That's Windows Terminal, by the way. I'm distracted.
Yes.
Is that built into Windows 11 yet, or do you still have to download it from the store?
Yes, no, it's they put it finally in, and by default, I mean you can get it for the ones running on Windows 10. If you go to the store, you type terminal, you'll have other terminals. Okay, so we have Fluent that I used for some time when we didn't get like a proper terminal by Microsoft. But nowadays I run typically. You can see the small in the icon. You have a small blue thingy. So I run the preview, but you can simply install also like the Windows terminal. Okay, I have it installed also. So from the store,
it's great. In my courses, if anyone here's coming from my courses, I still haven't updated them to talk about terminal yet, because there was Commander, all these alternatives that for years we had, but I feel like the new Windows terminal has just blown by all of them in terms of its performance and simplicity, and it feels like modern Windows instead of like some Windows XP app. So
no, true. It's like if I go to the command prompt, I mean because I have command prompt on the terminal also. But anyway, but if you go to the old console, right, the old terminal, that there's some limitations nowadays. I mean, you just look about the settings. Now it's graphic. Before it was just the JSON file. It was kind of complicated, but now it's graphics, and I cannot zoom, unfortunately. Sorry, but here is like you have like all the settings and so on. So by default, with Windows 11, it will come with, but by default, if you don't have like a terminal, but you want one, then go for Windows Terminal nowadays. Seriously, I think they really catch up on most features. And again, open source. Again, the commitment from Microsoft, right? But it's open source. You can make a pull request if you want, and
Very cool. So, not to skip ahead necessarily, but I hear there's better GUI support. Like, what does that even mean? You mentioned it earlier about WSL2 when it first came out it was really just designed for shell stuff, not
exactly.
to run GUI apps inside Linux, but it sounds like that's maybe changing.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think it's
Not to give a spoiler or anything.
no, it's okay. It's what is I don't remember now. PowerShell, my friends, my dear friends.
Oh yeah, don't ask me. Someone in chat,
Jeez,
what's the PowerShell environment
no,
command?
Jesus, it's like that. No, what? I'm dumb. Sorry, I'm really missing something. I want to see. I want to showcase like my Windows environment variables.
In
I
$env,
Yeah, normally, but
capital ENV. It's not case specific in PowerShell,
no,
but
no. Yeah. I know I'm missing something. I know I'm missing
yeah,
something.
to list them all.
Yeah, Danny.
env:/.
Yeah.
Oh, you can't iterate them all with. Sometimes PowerShell is just not simple
No,
enough.
no. I know it's not. I know it's not. Jesus. No, because print like in PowerShell. Okay, but anyway, let's move on.
Oh, is it
So
dir
the thing that
env?
yeah, I
I'm
tried.
googling env:.
Oh yeah, thank you.
There we
Oh,
go.
without
Google
the dollar. Yeah, okay.
Microsoft's
Google
dev
is the
blog.
best. Google is the best.
Yeah, because you can dir anything in PowerShell, right? You can dir the registry, I think, and all. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I'm
So, but
really
yeah,
rusty on my PowerShell, but I used to do it a lot a decade ago. So
I love PowerShell, as you can tell. I use it all day.
I
I
want
use
to
it
use
all.
it, but then I have to learn it, and
Uh,
then I don't learn it. So
no,
yeah,
no. But PowerShell is, I mean, is really powerful. Joke aside, is like I could, like, I have to search for it a lot, but once I know what I want to do, like it's really powerful. Anyway, so what I wanted to show you here is that we have actually, you know what? That's why it's not working, because I didn't want to do it in PowerShell, but here. Ah, gosh. Okay, so here I'm on OpenSUSE. Um,
so you're in a
and
WSL2,
if
right?
I,
You're in a WSL2
yeah, I'm
VM.
on
Yeah.
WSL2 OpenSUSE, exactly. And here, if I just look at some of the variables by typing env. This case it worked, right? So in typing env, so we can see that we have something about interrupt here. But what I really want, so the distro name, we have also it. But now look at this. Nowadays we have finally a display server built in, right, on Windows. Okay, now they choose Wayland, which is kind of cool because it's hopefully the what all the Linux distributions will adopt after the X server. X server works perfectly, right? But it's like it's an old technology. Wayland is the more modern technology, so it will bring more capabilities, of course. So the thing is here, if I go, uh, yeah, I have Wayland, but I should have something else. Like, where is my display? So if I just echo $display, you can see that again it's displaying like like a Linux computer, like, right, where you just have like local host. So colon 0 is like local host. Back in the day, for the ones who use like WSL2 or WSL1 with the Windows server, okay, X server, then you had to get an IP, know which port actually it's mapping, or like which or socket maybe, and then you could finally have your display. Here I don't have to do all that. I can simply have the display set as a Linux computer. My display server is Wayland, okay, and with that, if I we have an extern. No, so CNF extern. And you tell me to do this here. I love OpenSUSE for that, like suggesting like the small search by default about
Yeah.
packages. It's really neat actually. And now if
Yeah.
I run an Xterm, here it is. I have Xterm running.
Wow.
So now you can tell some differences. First off, if you look here, again, I know it's tiny, sorry for that, but like I have a small penguin here on the task on the taskbar. Then you can see.
I feel like we needed I feel like we need a celebration for just showing that. Like,
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead. Can I? No, it's like
so it
complete no.
still looks very, X11, X Windows
Because
y.
it's extern. Because it's really
Yeah.
extern. Okay. So now let's do something else. Let me run here what I showed you quickly before, but let me just run Firefox, for example. Now, okay, I have the team still, okay, but I have Firefox running, and I can go to YouTube, and I'm in Switzerland, so you will see stuff. Yeah, even okay, I have survived, but that's not what I want. I want Bret Fisher, and I want okay,
Oh,
our
live now.
stream. Let's no, okay, so he doesn't like it. He doesn't like the live stream. That's okay. Let's, but I will explain why. Let's put okay, and here I have the video. I don't have sounds. I will
Yeah,
explain also why.
that's
But
fine.
here I have it. Okay, so but you can tell that it's running. Now the only catch for the good eyes out there is like when you look at these, what it does looks like.
Oh, it's like you're running
It
in a
looks
container.
exactly. So now if I do a Docker PS, I will see that I'm running the same machine. Okay.
So
Up to
how
2
many
hours.
levels
Okay.
deep in the inception are we here? So we are we
We are
get
far, far in the dream right
we're
now. We
into
are far, far in the
WSL2,
dream.
then into Docker container, and then we're pulling that back out. That video is now coming back all the way to the host.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To Windows. Like, yeah. But here, if you look at, again, Docker Desktop, so I'm running Docker Desktop, right? We can see the name, which is Upbeat Da Vinci, which is kind of cool, actually. We can see, of course, the logs and everything. And if we look at the inspect here on the mounts, which is the most important part, you can see that we are mounting actually X11 sockets directly from the host, WSL2, that has access to the graphic. Okay, we mount it like normal, like my go-to, and what like one of the first demos that exploded my mind literally was Jess Frizzell, Willy
Yep.
Wonka containers in containers world or something like that, and she was running every application from a container, and that just killed me.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, as my friend Danny is saying on the chat, we have also audio. Okay. I will not showcase audio because I tried it out before and my Pulse server was not, or it's not working. So I'm always messing a little bit around. Uh, so yeah, it's so for the commands still, because I see one point and I think it's really important. Docker run. Oops, Docker run. Okay. So actually, initially I have the Pulse audio, but forget now for the time being the Pulse audio because I'm not running it. Here is like the commands. So when you learn Docker, okay, the first commands, and that's one that I said all the time. Docker run is my love command. That's how I was amazed by Docker. You do a Docker run, dash it alpine, and you have something running in front of you that is not your computer, right? You have a user space, and for me it was like the most impressive command ever. Independent of what was behind, I didn't understand really, but it was like I just did something, I created something out of nowhere that doesn't look like what I'm running on my computer, and I can run commands like WSL. That's why WSL was so much let's say, kind of the same. WSL suddenly was like, you run WSL and boom, it happens. Like it
Yeah.
runs and you build something. Something was created in front of your eyes out of nowhere, right? So forget the -rm. IT is for interactive, and then the mount here, the volume that I'm mounting is tmp dot unix, okay, and I mount the same, and then the display variable, which is the :0 into the Ubuntu. So I set an environment variable here at the display for the display environment variable. So here, if I do echo $display also, I will have the same as I had before. Okay, so that's the same. That's normal.
And
But
so
I
that's the
preset it.
magic. That's the
Yeah,
magic of getting it in a container. Okay.
I preset it, and then the mounting of the socket. That's actually what will allow us then to communicate from the container to let's say from the socket container here to our socket running here. That will allow us to run like extern before it run, thanks to that. And
All right.
the rest is magic, I'll say. But
Yeah. So
but yes, go ahead.
Anton's got a question. Is it possible to launch intensive GPU apps like Blender, for example?
So I let me say it like that. I never tried it out, but Microsoft has first of all, WSL is GPU enabled. So there's NVIDIA, AMD, Intel that have specific drivers for WSL. If you want to run actually a GPU let's say intensive apps, for example. One thing that you can tell that it's potentially using the GPU, but maybe my better friends know it. Again, I'm running it on okay, no GPUs
Container.
detected yet. So
Yeah.
yeah, but from here is like there's no, I mean,
Yeah, I noticed it
there's
was
no
fast. Your video
lagging,
play was too
right?
good. Like, yeah, your video looked great.
Yeah, the video was just running, right? So the thing is like when you don't have like the acceleration from the GPU, like the thing is sluggish, and I've been there, so it was like running like saccading a lot. Here, I mean, that's snappy and better. Look now, remember, Firefox on top of containers, through WSL, showing on Windows, but they went a little bit further. If you look at the icon, and I know it's tiny, is actually the Firefox icon with a small penguin near it.
Okay.
So I know that I'm running Firefox on WSL thanks to the small penguin, but
Yeah.
that's the icon.
Not
Remember, external, it was just
so you won't confuse.
that's
Yeah. It won't confuse your apps.
right.
Okay.
So here, if I type, actually, let me see if it finds it. Oh no, okay. Depending on how you install it, I guess it will also go to your menu. But I'm in Windows 11, so let me see. Oh, okay, let me see maybe the all apps. Let me go to the Open SUSE. Oh no, okay. So I don't have the small, let's say, a drop down here. Okay, so it didn't recognize it. But for the future, and I guess it's again, I'm running a dev channel version, right? So don't pay too much attention. If there's a bug, it's normal. But you will be able to launch also your applications from the taskbar, like the applications that you run on WSL can be installed there.
Yeah, and
So that's how far they went with the integrations.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing there, especially the driver stuff. Just the work of the drivers that's a lot of work. And to deliberately do that, which I still feel like running Linux applications through WSL on Windows is a super edge case. Like those of us all here, we're not the normal people, right? And so when you think of the billions of Windows installations, I don't know if there's a billion Windows 10. There probably is, I'm assuming. But yeah, if you think about the percentage of those that are going to use WSL2, and then the percentage of those that would ever want to try to run something in a GUI in WSL2, like we're basically focused on this core audience of, geeks geeking out on devs and sysadmins and hobbyists that are just geeking out on this stuff. But I mean, there's some interesting applications here too, because this isn't this. I don't think this is this easy on Mac. Right? So because on Mac, I still have to install X11 and do some things to make it all kind of work in Docker on Mac. This seems a lot easier. And I certainly don't think that I get driver support, right? Because Apple's been largely silent on this whole, let's use containers or Linuxy things. I mean, you can run X11 stuff on Mac fine from the host, but the minute you want to do it in a container, it's not the best case. This related to that topic, by the way. It's a little bit of a topic change for you, but I just want to make sure we get all the questions answered that people are reaching out. Was Anton earlier? I didn't forget about you. Asked about mounting drive speed and saying sometimes it's really, sometimes working with something like Mount C is extremely slow comparing to file system inside WSL2. Warning there for all of you that are ever thinking about doing this for development and talking about Docker in here, there's two things now that you should be moving yourself towards. The first one is you should be looking at putting all your source code. If you're going to be developing in Linux Docker containers, then putting your source code clones, putting those in the Linux file system, not on your host file system. But if you do that, you probably want an editor that can easily understand that and do that. So all of us, I mean, not everyone can switch to VS Code. We all have our own opinions, but the world of developers is more rapidly moving to Visual Studio Code than I've seen any other editor in the history of developer editors. Like everyone I know is using VS Code. Even diehards that were, I have colleagues that are diehard Vim people. I was diehard Vim, and I find myself using VS Code more and more and more than just Vim because there's so much in it, including support natively for putting all your files inside of these Linux WSL2s and getting the native file performance out of them. Anyway, sorry, I know you have your own opinions on that. Yeah. So
no. And again, that's perfect because if we forget for a second VS Code, then another big player in the world of IDE, which is JetBrains, they have actually integrated WSL with JetBrains.
Great.
So now they have exactly. I'm reading the comments. So the comments was passed in my phrase, so it will be in the future. But anyway, so thank you, Mike. It was exactly JetBrains. I knew JetBrains. So and JetBrains is really working hard to get like almost a VS Code, not almost, but getting the VS Code experience for JetBrains. And so for all the potentially Java developers that use JetBrains since ages, then, well, my friends, you are now served, right? Yeah. So here, like Bret was saying, again, okay, let me do something like this. If I look at...
While you're doing that real quick, before you type that, but we're about to end that subject, and I wanted to tell everybody because I totally forgot at the beginning of the episode. I'm finally relaunching the podcast because we haven't had an episode updated on the podcast in a year, and that's all my fault. Our team had a podcast editor, and then we don't have that person anymore, so we had to take on that work ourselves. And so for those of you that are watching. We do have a podcast version of this that's audio only, and now the episodes are going to start coming ideally once a week. And the first one is from last week or 2 weeks ago, maybe, where we did a Visual Studio Code with GitHub Copilot, which was fascinating. And we had so much fun. So I'm actually creating a clipped, edited version, a Cliff Notes version of that for YouTube. And then we have a podcast version out coming. Should be dropping today. So if you just go to bretfisher.com and click on podcast or look in your local, any of your podcast tools and just search for Bret Fisher, you should find that. Anyway, little blurb, selfish, shameless plug, because that highlights just what's happening in the VS Code world. Like it is just becoming the tool, especially for DevOps, Whereas not a lot of the other tools really focus on DevOps for editors. I feel like Visual Studio Code is finally making it like a first class citizen for the DevOps world. Terraform, Docker, Kubernetes, all the things inside there. Please continue. Back to the show.
Yeah.
So Code Insiders.
So let me first show where I am. Let me show what command is Code Insiders. As you can tell, again, is on the app data, Microsoft, blah, 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 Code Insiders, okay? Still, I can run it with the dots at the end of the command, just to tell like open this directory in Code Insiders, which is a Windows application. When I do that, it will do two things. One, it will install a server side on WSL, on my distro. Second one, it will run it. Yes. It will run my Windows base, so you can see that there's no, you cannot see, but yeah, there's no small penguin or anything here. So it's really the Windows binary of VS Code insiders. And here, that's where the magic happens, is like there's a module or extension, sorry, which is WSL2. And with that, it means that we can have a remote, visually, let's say VS Code, targeting my WSL2 directory directly. Okay, and if I look at, I don't know, let me do an ls, just ls. Here you can see that I've only been, and so if I create a new file, okay, Bret show and is amazing, okay, and I save it. So, oh yeah, I can do something like this. Okay, so I created a new file, I created content inside, and here when I did the ls, without showing the hidden files, right, and folders. So now if I do again an ls, I have Bret show. So if I use a tool like cat or a command like cat, I can see Bret show is amazing. Even better, now I'll show something really important. My Vim, my VI skills, hopefully. I guess it will be Vim, but anyway. So Bret show and is totally amazing. Okay, and I save it. When I come back here, I have my file updated. So now, maybe that's what you, maybe not with, oh yeah, maybe with the Copilot, I don't know. But I don't know if you were running something like, I don't know, like a React app or something like this. It means that while you are coding, and maybe even, again, you can, if I can mount inside a container, I can develop directly into the container also, but I can have also auto reload, for example. So I don't have like I can run my server, and maybe if I have auto reload, potentially I think it will work. Never tried it out, but anyway.
Yeah.
So, but you can, and you are working here.
Yeah, that's that's the hint. That's the hint that you're in WSL mode in the editor, and yeah,
exactly.
which WSL2 it's using. Yeah.
Right, so here you can see like and the funny part is like, let me actually run codes just like that. Okay, because I'm on administrator. Okay, but let me show something. Let me just
someone asked
here.
Someone asked, IntelliJ, does IntelliJ support this IDA? I don't actually know. I haven't used IntelliJ in a while.
IntelliJ supports what? Sorry.
I guess they're asking about supporting WSL. Sounds like.
Yes. So, no. Yes, I think JetBrains went for IntelliJ first. So I know they have like a suite of applications, but the one that they wanted first was IntelliJ.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that, but I think if you look at JetBrain, if you look, JetBrain WSL, you will see what they have. So here, just quickly, what I wanted to show is like, and how also Visual Studio Code is built. I am in WSL modes, and here I can see my local installed applications. And if I run the Visual, hopefully it will show what I am trying to do. Oh no, okay, it reopened. Okay, in WSL. I don't want in WSL. I want in.
Maybe that.
Yeah, let me see. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So you can see already like Docker here, and if I go to extensions, I'm missing something here compared to before, but okay, it died.
Syncing
That's
extensions.
normal.
Bye-bye.
That's normal. I'm
Go
I'm on
away.
insiders all the way, so it's let
Yeah,
me
not to go
see
down
if
too far down this rabbit hole, but like,
yeah, that's okay, okay, okay.
I'm a WSL fanboy, so I've had not WSL. I'm a Visual Studio Code fanboy because it runs everywhere, runs in a browser. You can run it yourself on a server. You can run it on code spaces, which, by the way, organizations, just like yesterday, organizations and enterprises on GitHub.com can now use code spaces, which we couldn't use before. And so it's everywhere. I mean, you can run it on anything. I run it in a browser on my iPad. It runs inside of WSL. You can run it from a container. It's just like, it's pervasive. Yeah, it's pervasive. And everyone's making add-ons for it. So everything you ever wanted to do, it seems like in an editor, is now a project inside of Visual Studio Code. I mean, I feel sorry for all the companies that have paid editors, because I don't see how they can fight free in the future when the editor is just so pervasive and everywhere and updated constantly and has all the newest stuff. I don't know how you compete with that.
If they don't go for maybe Teams or like IntelliJ, which is like really the number one for Java development. Maybe there's others like for other languages, but the problem is like when you have like open source software really, and you have like that amount of developers around the world that want to use your the same editor and start building these really cool extensions, then the other companies start to have a problem.
Yeah. It's gonna be a tough market for them. I mean, and that's what I love about VS Code, is because it was always a compromise. It was like, well, there's some great free ones out there. Like we had Atom, obviously Notepad++. Like we had all these other ones, Vim and Emacs, obviously. But it always felt like, there's these paid ones that are really great. Like, I still love Sublime Text, super fast. It can open up a 5 meg log file faster than any other editor I know, faster than Vim. And it's amazing. And I still pay for it, but I only really use it for that use case. Everything else is VS Code.
Right.
All right. So we have some other questions real quick, because I know we're running long. Anton asks, any news on FreeBSD and WSL2?
None.
Yeah.
Like everyone wants it. Like everyone who knows BSD wants like the Unix type of let's say of OS. Unfortunately, how WSL, like I said, how WSL is that the kernel loaded inside the small micro VM is a Linux kernel. Full stop. So even if you try to actually swap the kernel, put a FreeBSD kernel, but then the init system, and that one you cannot change it because it's really proprietary. Let's say that's the proprietary part here of WSL is the init system, where if you just show my screen again quickly, I will just do PS.
By the way, was a huge FreeBSD fan back in 20 years ago, before we had Gen 2, before Ubuntu and all these new things. That was my go-to. I ran so many servers on FreeBSD, but I feel like it's kind of like all the BSDs are kind of getting left behind in the hype of Linux, which is a shame because they're a great OS, but
during my Unix years, I was really Solaris, which is
I also had that.
Let's say fork of BSD at the end.
I bought
So
used Solaris workstations and had them in my house.
Yeah. And Solaris, I mean Solaris, not containers, but Solaris zones, like dtrace and everything was really coming from Sun. But yeah, Unix like that. It's another approach, and BSD I never really tested, but I know there's a lot of fans at Microsoft also, by the way. But for now they didn't really address the BSD let's say requirements.
It's a good point you make. It's more than just the kernel. It's more than just like taking it and putting it in a package format and shipping it. Like there's a lot of complexity to the, like you said, a init system and all this other stuff that would have to, because I'm sure that if they did it, they'd want it to have feature parity. So feature parity. So now it would need it would need display support. I mean, it's just so.
Yeah.
Docker's the same way, right? There's still no official Docker FreeBSD
right
build, even though I think there's some other ones out there.
So
but
what I wanted just to show is like you can see here, like there's a init/init that is run, but we don't see any other let's say process manager like systemd, OpenRC, or others, right? So it's really like it's something that's WSL launch, and that's there actually.
That's a good distinguishing factor too on the difference between a full like Ubuntu VM versus a WSL one, which is designed to be, like you said, mini VM, lightweight VM, whatever the right word is. That this is an environment almost more for developers or operations and not so much diehard sysadmins that love everything about a particular distribution. So what's crazy now is that like you can have, you basically like, let's just pick one, CentOS, Ubuntu, Debian, whatever. Like with Ubuntu, you now have the WSL2 variant. You now have the traditional Ubuntu server, Ubuntu desktops that they've had. So WSL2 is definitely a different feel. And then there's the container-based version of Ubuntu, which is totally different. Has different files in it. Doesn't have systemd again like WSL2. So it's important long term for people that are actually playing in this world to understand how Linux distributions. You can get Debian and all the things now, but running it in a VM versus WSL2 versus in a container actually is, if you just looked at the file list, is quite different. There's different stuff and different processes happening. And so the lightest weight of them all is containers. Like container-based distributions are the lightest weight. They don't have a kernel, they don't have drivers.
Yeah.
And then WSL2 has some of that. It has display support. It has, and then when you go to full VM, that's the one that's like a gig install with systemd doing everything, and it has like actual display drivers with TTYs and all this stuff that you need. And when you're plugging in a VGA cable and all that stuff.
No, true. So there's like, but the funny part, really, just to amend a little bit what you said about the containers and WSL. Let me do quickly WSL run name Bret show Ubuntu. So I will not run anything. I will just run a container. It will run and die, right? Now I can do the exports of Bret show into where am I? Yeah, it should be okay, but into like bret.tar.gz. Yeah. It's exports. Sorry, been a long time that I didn't use it.
Yeah,
dash. Oh yeah, okay. Sorry. My bad.
It goes to
okay,
std.
Okay. And then the name. Yeah, sorry. I was in
or
Docker
pipe
run.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. So dash show. So then bret.tar.gz and then bret show, and then I can do an import actually of Bret / I will kill it afterwards. And then what I'm doing here is like I'm importing into WSL a new WSL distro called Bret. Inside the directory Bret, I will show you what it creates like that. And then based on the export from my Ubuntu Docker container. And if I do -d for Bret, so I want to run Bret, here we go.
I had no idea that was even possible.
That's how I made
That's
my
a,
name. Yeah.
that's actually
That was
pretty
like,
cool.
I'm exporting a lot of things, and I'm creating my distros based on Docker images, actually. So
Yeah. Yeah, that is pretty slick. So I'm guessing the WSL import feature it adds all the other bits that are needed to your files because obviously it's got more to it than just the things in a container
yes,
because it's
so
got to have a
exactly.
kernel. It's got to
Well, here is Ubuntu also running, right? Where I installed Firefox, right? When we see there's no processes, like you said, Brett, right? Correctly, it's like there's nothing. It's like leveraging the kernel and everything behind the scenes. So what WSL does here is, remember, we are copying like user space, user lands
yeah.
off the Linux distro, and then behind the scenes, what it has is like it will add the init, it will add, let's say, the disk. So here, not here, sorry, if I move here, cd Bret, here I have like my
Mm.
vhdx file, which is the hyper-v file format for VMs, and here it created it. And if I do a wsl-l-v long listing, we have here, you are
There you
here.
go. Nice. Yeah, I forget that they're all VHDs or VHDX, the new format. But yeah,
Yeah, in for WSL2, yes.
yeah,
So my, let's say, my going to, let's say, how I create the majority of my, let's say, custom distros, I start with Docker, actually Docker image.
very cool.
Yeah,
Um,
thank you.
Yeah, that's like the burying the lead is what we would call that. Like, that's a neat little thing. You'd want to get a Docker container. You want it to be a WSL distro and have it without having to launch Docker in a shell in Docker. A couple of commands, not actually that hard.
Well, even, let's say, sorry, because I like going like I can
Yeah,
put like
turn on
Docker
Docker.
desktop now, exactly,
By the
and
way, for all
now,
of you, you probably want to just enable all of those. Like if you have a bunch of different distributions, you probably want Docker
yeah,
to work on all of
yeah,
them,
yeah.
and you got to go in there. You got to go in there and do that inside the GUI. So we have two remaining troubleshooting questions. If those people are still hanging around, don't know if you have any idea on how to help these people, but I didn't want to ignore them. Mario asks, I've been seeing some weird WSL2 networking issues when I connect to my company VPN. It appears the resolve.conf is not automatically resetting. Nuno, are you aware of any of these networking issues?
Yes, I'm. Let's say I'm aware. I never faced them because I don't have really a VPN for now, at
Yeah.
least. I will have it on my new company, but the VPN is for now. It's let's say Microsoft knows about it, and the problem is like whenever you turn on the VPN, like Mario is saying, then it's not working actually.
Right.
It doesn't
Right.
refresh itself, so you need to go out of WSL. Here, let's say that you put like your VPN on, so you go out. Now there's a command called shutdown, okay, for WSL. The thing that you must be aware, I can do it because we are ending anyway the talk,
Yeah.
but is like the moment I do that, okay, everything killed, okay. Also, my Docker desktop, as you can see it here,
Right.
right? So it's killing the micro VM. Actually, in here, if I do a HCS diag, it's a small tool, and I just do list here. You can see WSL micro VM running. Okay,
Mm.
you cannot do much with this tool, but at least you can see that it's running here. And this one add another name before the shutdown. Now that I did the shutdown, if I run again WSL, you should be able to actually connect
Oh,
finally.
okay. So you're basically shutting it down, and when you start back up, it's pulling in the resolve config
It's like a
file.
VM, yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
remember,
Yeah.
the VM, the NATing is based on the Hyper-V NATing, right? So here you go to Hyper-V,
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean,
virtual switch,
and to be
right?
fair,
And
like
here,
this isn't.
yep.
Oh, sorry. Keep going. Keep going. Finish your. Finish your. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's just like yeah, it's showing, but I know it's tiny. Sorry, but here, if you go to the virtual switch manager, you will see the networking, and the networking is like internal network, meaning it's like it's bridged to your principal, let's say,
Nick.
network
Yeah.
behind. Yeah, exactly. And then so when you put like a VPN, the NIC is no more like the previous one, right? It does a bridge with your VPN, and now it's VPN that it's taking the lead. So now you cannot connect anymore because yeah, it didn't refresh in a sense. So you need really to kill it to recreate it. So the shutdown will do all that normally, and you will be able. But it means that if you are working and then your VPN closes and goes up again, it might not work again also. So it's they are working on it.
Yeah.
Long story
Yeah.
short.
It commented. Tons of comments are coming in on this because it's evidently a popular issue. I mean, the reality is that no matter what you're doing with VMs or any sort of emulation or network translation on your local machine, like VPNs always become a big problem. Because everything handles it differently and everything has different support and every VPN does certain things. Like some VPNs, like especially the Cisco Anywhere stuff, it loves to just like break everything and block everything. And like Docker has had this ongoing, every year or two, I feel like they something breaks with the VPN on Mac or Windows for Docker, just because there's a bunch of NATs, there's a bunch of synthetic packets moving around to get out your interface, and the VPNs all treat it differently. So to be fair to them, it is very complex, and I'm sure that they want it to work. It's just a question of getting it all to work with all VPNs.
I don't think. Yeah, I don't think it's really like I mean, it's impacting WSL, but I would say that it's not really WSL based issue by default.
Right.
Okay, it's impacted by what the VPN does.
Yeah. Great answer. I'm impressed by your knowledge there, and everybody's in chat is very happy they have that. Okay. So, and then the last question, saving the best for last here. Thank you for being so patient, Kirill. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. I love WSL a lot, but I must use WSL1 due to I needing IPv6 reachability with my production. Right. And in WSL2, I have only IPv4 private interfaces in Windows. Is there any solution to this issue coming?
I don't know. Seriously, I'm not in the head of Microsoft. I'm following a lot because like we have quite an awesome community. Like Danny, Jeremy are there. Thank you, my friends. But we have really, let's say, a huge community, and we are facing it ourselves. Yeah. And like we're providing a lot of feedback to Microsoft here and there. They are listening. You can go to the WSL GitHub page. So it's not development based, but it's for all the issues and everything. So we can check the link afterwards anyway for the show notes. But the thing is, like, you can go there and open the issues. It might look that there's a lot of them, but believe me, they are fixing them. They are looking at them at least.
Yeah. It's funny. I've largely had to ignore IPv6 from my home. I've been working from home for a decade, and only until I think it was this year I finally got IPv6 support on my FiOS home connection. So like if I go to testipv6.com, it's like you get 10 out of 10. You have IPv6. So now I suddenly am interested again in IPv6 because there was this surge in the early to mid 2000s when we were. At the time, we were kind of running out of IPv4 because we didn't have virtualization yet. We didn't have all of this stuff happening where we could NAT everything. And I was really hot and heavy on IPv6. I was telling everybody at our companies that like we had it. It was not an option. It was going to have to happen. Mm-hmm. We're just going to have to do it. And it was such an uphill battle of complexity and compared to IPv4. And now it's like sneaking its way. I mean, obviously there's places like China that have everywhere, but like it's sneaking its way into our lives and cars and things that we don't really think about. But now there is this like even on Docker Hub where there's a discussion recently, and I think they either just finished fixing this problem or they are about to, that Docker Hub didn't have IPv6 support. And I think that's either just been resolved recently or it's about to be. I feel like I saw traction in one of the issues because it's on their
So
roadmap. So
I'm not really following like IPv6. Yeah, so I'm not really a network guy to start with. So it's something that I learned, let's say, the minimum to not be blocked by it. So I understand that.
yeah,
I understand like fixed IP, dynamic IP, DHCP, and so on. So I say I understand. It's not that I know it.
right,
There's a
right,
nuance here, right?
right.
So,
It just
but
works. I mean, that's the kind of the point. It's like hopefully it
yeah,
just works, and someone else's job to worry about
ex-
whether it's IPv4.
yeah,
It's like,
in my case, yes, definitively. I know that I will have to go a little bit deeper, especially when you start entering also the Kubernetes world, knowing about what are the networking interfaces and everything. So it's okay. You still need to understand at least a little bit more. But yeah, IPv6 for me, it's also I'm not using it definitively for now,
yeah,
at least.
yeah. Um, and yeah, and I think people like in the comments, it's like it takes IPv6 becomes more important the more people that use it. So
Yeah,
if you're on this
exactly.
channel, you're probably someone who's aware of it. So go check your routers and your like. There's actually an option in my router that said enable IPv6, and it wasn't checked. So I checked it, and it worked. Like it wasn't turned on by default, and then I checked it and it restarted, and then and now when I'm browsing the internet I can use IPv6, which is transparent and nothing to me that unless things go wrong, right? Then when things go wrong it sucks. But anyway, so yeah, the more of us that are using it, the more these kind of companies and things will care. It's one of those problems with like when IPv6 is used internally in your company and then everything on the internet is IPv4, like that's not really helping our cases because
Mhm.
when the internet, if the internet's IPv6 first, then I think a lot of these internal things and toolings, because there's been IPv6 stuff in conversations, especially with related to Docker, not just WSL2, but Docker, for ever since the beginning. Like Docker adding
Yeah.
support, and then like Swarm never got it. The Swarm overlay networks never supported it. And like there's been conversations everywhere when it comes to technology emulation, virtualization, all those things. It's always been another topic, just like VPNs. Thanks, man. It's been fun.
Thank you, Brett. Was really nice. I hope like first the questions were answered and I didn't say too much bad things. Like wrong, not bad, like wrong things,
Wrong
and
things.
tomorrow I have like someone coming at me like, no, we have to talk. Like, okay, sorry.
Yeah, this is the most correct that you and I will ever be on this video. It will live in infamy on the internet, and it will only get more incorrect over time.
Good.
Or less correct over time. Yeah, that's just the nature of the beast. So like whenever I look at last year's videos that I recorded, I'm like, man, half that stuff isn't true anymore. So
Yeah, no, yeah, yeah, that's crazy. But yeah, you're
so
right. No, but thank you very much. Yeah.
and just to tell everybody, as we're wrapping up here, go check out Nuno's. He's on Twitter. Go check him out there. He writes blog posts at WSL.dev. Go check that out. He's got a new job. You want to talk about your new job?
Yeah, why not? Like I made it like
Put you on the
thank
spot.
you, Sujay. It's like Sujay just spoiled like the entry. So cool. But yeah, I'm joining Susie Rancher in November. So yeah, that's thank you.
Yeah, yeah, very
That's
cool.
a long way. That's a long way coming. Maybe for another discussion once, like where WSL actually centrally wrote me. WSL Docker, the cloud native foundation, of course, but like the cloud native environment community, really, let's say, enabled me to talk to you, talk to Nigel,
Yep.
which are my captains. So I will make a tweet later because I did take a print screen today about one meeting that we had. So I have like 4 persons. 3 of them are captains. The first is me, of course, but like 3 are captains, and you are the reason I'm here today, like literally. So
Thanks.
thanks to that, I went through now blogging a lot, knowing a lot, and finally I've been hired by Susie. Yeah. So I will start finally not only blogging, it will be also my passion becoming a bit my job.
But your job,
So
yeah,
I'm yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, that's the best part. My passion was Docker, and then it became my job as is just like that. And I feel the same way. Like everyone else in the community that I've met over the last 5-6 years has just been fantastic. I love this cloud native community, and I don't thank it enough because there's a lot of people that are doing a lot of hard work at a lot of companies,
true.
and people that are doing it as a hobby, like you were doing, that weren't fully invested as a day job, but they cared about this community and the future of tech, essentially. So I really appreciate you and all the work you do, because I love content creators. Like, because being one of them, I know how hard it is. I know how much work you have to put in,
Yeah.
and I know not only the pressure of constantly making content, but also that we all do it. We all we don't we. It's I feel like it's like extremely selfless act, right? Because you're doing it to help others. Sure, I mean, I make money on my courses, but like the passion has to be there first, right? You have to want to share, and this community can often be like 99% of the time can be kind, and obviously there's always trolls out there, but I really
but
get
that's
a lot
why
of
my blog has no comments, for example. And
right,
that's again the
right,
blog. It's not my really blog. It's like thanks again to the one of the I will say my best friends. Really, I never met him, but he's really one of my best friends. Is Brian Kettleson from Microsoft, and he really enabled me to reach another level about blogging and everything. And
yeah,
you're totally right. Like when I read blogs, I read blog until the end because I know how much the person had to go through actually
yeah, yeah. It's
just to write it,
and
just to ensure that it's not wrong or
I'm a horrible writer. Like I need every spell check, grammar check, Grammarly. I mean, I can make 10 videos easier than I can make one blog post. It seems like I don't know what it is about writing, but I obsess over it. Like you said, every paragraph, rewriting it, changing
yeah,
titles. I have a blog post that we are about to launch about basically what is DevOps, and
right,
it's coming out with Udemy. Udemy is going to be putting it on their blog soon, so I'll be telling everybody when that launches. But it's like I think it's 3,000 words. It's long, and it isn't because I went on and on. It's like I wanted it to be as information packed as possible and actionable. So I actually have
right.
we're going to be talking about it on a different show when it all happens. But I actually created like Brett's "Are You DevOps Enough" survey. Like it's basically I think it's 3 or 4
Nice.
different subjects, and like you rate yourself. And it's like a super simple, like 1 or 2 or 3 options, and you basically give yourself a point list, and then I tell you at the end, like, okay, you're just starting with DevOps, you're definitely growing in DevOps, or like your team or community or organization
Right,
is
right, right.
leading in DevOps. Because I've worked with enough companies over the last 10 years. I've worked with dozens and dozens of companies, and I have, hundreds of thousands of students that all share their stories with me. So I feel like I have a little bit of a pulse on
Yeah.
what is the average DevOps-ness of a company? Like what are companies today? Like we all see the news. We all see the blogs that are like amazing DevOps, right? We have everything perfect. We're like Netflix. We have all automated. But most of us are not that. Most of us are far from that. And I wanted to give people a sense of like, where am I really, and how much does that matter, and what should I look forward to? And so anyway, that like if I do like one blog post a year, and and
Wow.
this is
No,
the
no,
one. This is the one.
I didn't let's say in the blog post of WSL Dev. Then I have like my own blog posts. I have other blog posts that have been actually featured by Susie Rancher actually, and then other sites have also my blog posts.
Do you
Uh,
keep like a central storage of all this? I mean, your
yes, for
Twitter.
my MVP for Microsoft MVP,
Yeah.
I have to.
Okay. You have
So
like a
I have
spreadsheet.
there, but I will write. I will write. I will give you some links that are not in WSL Dev indeed.
Yeah.
But yeah, but it's no. But writing, the thing is like once I'm done writing, I go through my blog post myself and try to reproduce it from scratch again
Yeah.
to see if I miss. I mean, it's just the process is just like yeah.
It's a lot. It's
long.
a lot. Well, thank you again for what you do and all the work you do. And now you get to be paid for it. So that's exciting. And thanks to all you that came and watched. And if you're listening on the audio podcast, thanks for listening to that. Now that we're back in the game with the podcast, I'm excited to get that going again because that was a lot of fun. And it's surprising how many people I would meet and say, I listen to your podcast. I mean, who knew podcasts were so popular? And if I was smart enough, I would have kept it going through the pandemic because evidently podcasts during the pandemic were a booming business and everybody was doing it. So you too should have a podcast. Or you can just keep coming back to my show, and then you'll have your own series on my show.
I will invite myself to other show. Yeah, your show definitively, and I have other friends that run also some podcasts. Might be in Portuguese though, but yeah, it's I prefer to be let's say invite than running it. But maybe one day, who knows? But not for now.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of work. Be scared. Be very scared because the tools are getting way better right now. I mean, we're in this great part where there's something called Descript. I won't even talk about it, but Descript is if you're making podcasts or anything, it is awesome. I'm editing now everything I do in Descript. It's like editing video and audio like you're editing a Google Doc, essentially. And it has AI-made robot voices of your voice so you can replace words and it'll change your word to it. Like if you said Docker but you meant Kubernetes, you can just swap it and it'll put in an AI-based version of your voice. It's awesome. Love it.
Okay.
So anyway, we'll leave you all with that. Again, thanks so much for being on the show. I'll definitely have you on. I'll have you on again, another 6 months, whatever, another couple of weeks. Who knows?
Who knows?
Everybody will have to come back and just find out. So we've got upcoming guests over the next couple of weeks. We've got dates over the next month. We got Phil Estes coming from AWS. We're going to be talking about Container D again. He's been on the show a couple times. I got Nigel Poulton, the famed Nigel of Kubernetes training world. He's going to be on the show in a couple of weeks. We've got Mattermost, which is like the Slack alternative that you host yourself. Mattermost is going to be on the show. Yeah. We're going to be learning about that. We're working on something with another tool. Teleport. I don't know if you've heard of Teleport, but it's like a VPN for Kubernetes. We're going to have them on the show. We don't have a date yet. Anyway,
it's Teleport, yeah.
Yeah, so we've got a whole lot of stuff coming. Come back here every Thursday. Like, subscribe, do all those YouTube-y things, and check out the podcast that we finally got going again after me saying I'm going to do it for 6-8 months. We're finally doing it.
Hey,
so
but he's there.
Yeah, it's happening. Check later today, everybody. All right. And again, thank you so much to your Patreon subscribers. You are the people that I appreciate the most because you're willing to give me a little bit of your hard-earned money to keep this show alive and to keep the podcast going. So we'll see you next week. Ciao, everybody.
Bye-bye.